Hi there, I'm Ian Willoughby, and thank you so much for joining me for episode 15 of Czech Next Wave. This is a joint podcast of the Czech Centres Network and Radio Prague International that's bringing highly talented young Czechs to a worldwide audience. In this episode, my guest is one of the Czech Republic's top screenwriters, Štěpán Hulík. Štěpán shot to attention almost a decade ago when, still in his 20s, he wrote Burning Bush. It was a big-budget miniseries about the aftermath of Jan Palach's self-immolation and was helmed by no less a name than the great European director Agnieszka Holland. Since then, the scriptwriter has notched up further successes, and his latest project, Suspicion, is just about to launch at the Karlovy International Film Festival. Enjoy my conversation with Štěpán Hulík in this episode of Czech Next Wave. My first question for you is, when did you really start taking an interest in cinema?
As far as I can remember, I think I was around 6 or maybe 7 years old, so it was quite early on. I have to admit to you to one thing, Ian. I was truly in love with Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was, a little boy. And actually through him, I managed to get to movies and to movie making. I was fascinated by him. I was fascinated by someone who was obviously coming from a very small European country and was able to move to the United States and to make for himself a huge career. Arnold Schwarzenegger is definitely greatest proof that no matter from how little country or from how poor environment you might come from, your dream may always come true if you work hard on yourself. You can manage to pull it off. So it was through Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I was so young. I think 7 years old, something like that.
Now, as a professional screenwriter, who are the screenwriters that you particularly admire?
Probably I shall name in the first place Peter Morgan, a British scriptwriter. He's a scriptwriter behind The Queen. He wrote also Frost Nixon, a wonderful movie. I admire his ability to work with actual real stories and to find something that elevates them, something universal in those real stories. And this need or this lust to work with reality and with history is something that I probably share with him. I definitely can't say that I share with him his enormous talent, his storytelling gift, but I deeply admire him, and I admire his movies.
And say, when you watch movies, when you watch TV shows, what are the mistakes made by screenwriters that most annoy you?
I would say that quite regularly I can see that the scriptwriter probably, didn't make his or her homework, so to speak, in terms of doing a proper research. I can always tell when this part of work wasn't done by a scriptwriter. And you can tell it as well, I think, as a member of the audience. It's when you feel that something just doesn't seem to be real or doesn't seem to quite fit into the story. And when you start to question whether this particular story would happen in this way, it's quite probably a sign that the scriptwriter wasn't thinking properly about it, wasn't doing a proper research, wasn't consulting his story with, psychologists, with sociologists. So this is something that really annoys me. And then, there is so much content nowadays. It's difficult to find actually time to watch new things, at least for me. So each and every time when I'm starting with a new series, and when I realize after some times that the story doesn't deserve my attention, so to speak, I'm always really angry at the scriptwriters and filmmakers, because I feel like being robbed of my time. So I would say that we as scriptwriters, or more broadly as storytellers, we really have to do our best not to rob the audiences of their precious time.
You know what, for me, the problem of today with all of these series is that so many of them are like a 7 out of 10. They're quite good. They have one or two good actors. They're pretty decent, but they're nothing special and they take 20 hours.
Yeah, and something is just missing. I would call it a strange attractor. Something that's really surprising, something that you haven't seen yet in some other series or shows or movies. And I realize, because I'm a scriptwriter as well, I realize how incredibly difficult it is to come up with, fresh solutions, fresh ideas. We can definitely say that everything has been already written on this planet. It's almost impossible to come up with something absolutely new or absolutely fresh. So everything we are creating is actually only some variation to something that has been already done before by our predecessors. But still, we have to do our best, because I think still you are able to make a variation to a classic story that would feel surprising. And this is actually our whole task, to find a surprising new angle into the well-known story.
Štěpán, you went to two schools to study different aspects of cinema. You did film studies at the arts faculty at Charles University and also did screenwriting and dramaturgy at FAMU. Which of those did you find the most beneficial?
Well, I would say that probably studying at FAMU was more important to me, because I was lucky enough to meet good people and people who turned out to be really important for me and for my career there. And I actually think that this is the biggest contribution the school can give you, that you would run into the right people. So FAMU was really important to me. But also, at Charles University, it was a great opportunity to look at the movies from a different perspective, from more, I would say, theoretical perspective, to study the film history from a different angle. So I'm really grateful for that as well.
Slaváku se před chvílí upálil student. Proč? Na protest proti okupaci.
You're perhaps best known for the three-part series Burning Bush, directed by the great Polish filmmaker Agnieszka Holland. I guess in those days you were still like in your late 20s. How exciting was it to have this as your first big project?
It was absolutely unbelievable. I was like 27, 28 years old. I was just finishing studies at FAMU, and my first script was being directed by this incredible person. Agnieszka is not only a wonderful director, someone who is able to elevate your story to some higher level. She's also a wonderful person. She's such a great personality, like only to sit down with her and talk to her on some issues. She's always able to give you some fresh perspective on well-known things. She's able to make you to look at things from a surprising way. And I really admire how she is able, and how she has been able to stay really modest and humble throughout whole career. No matter how famous she is still able to deal with people in this way. She's open-minded. She would listen to you. She will ask you the right questions, which is really important, because by doing that, she's able to make yourself to think about things you wouldn't be able to think otherwise. And every moment I was allowed to spend with her was a great opportunity to me, really. And each and every time I have this opportunity to meet her again and to spend a couple of minutes with her, talking to her, it's always a great pleasure.
Naša Míša se ztratila. Co?
You also did for HBO the series Pustina Wasteland, directed by Ivan Zachariash. And I'm curious, when you make a series like that for HBO, and they want to sell it at least to some degree internationally, is there a kind of HBO model that you have to follow, or do they give you instructions on how you have to create a series?
Probably they can give you some instructions, but well, now I'm gonna say something that would sound like I'm bragging about myself, a bit, but I would say it anyway. I truly believe that not only me, but also my wonderful colleagues, my producers, Tomáš Hrubý, we try to think about our movies, about our stories from some universal perspective. We are always asking ourselves this significant question, whether this story will be, understandable internationally or not. And if we feel that there is something missing, that maybe the audiences abroad will not be able to understand it, then we try to return to the beginning and try to consider it from a different, starting point. So we are always looking for some universal themes, universal ideas, and we are trying to make it as comprehensible as possible without losing some uniqueness, or some specificity of the story. Basically, what you are trying to do is to tell a story that would be as specific as possible and also as universal as possible at the same time. So you are trying to join those two things.
Filmmaking is clearly a collaborative process, but do you always enjoy working closely with the director, or are there times when it can be frustrating?
To be honest, I think that for each and every scriptwriter on the planet, sometimes the cooperation with the director might be frustrating because, in the end, it's always the director who is the master on the set, who is the master or the, the greatest god on the set that will somehow inject the life into the story, into the characters you have written as a scriptwriter. So there has to be a moment in your career probably or your life as a scriptwriter when you give in to that fact, and when you realize that there is probably no other way around it, so you have to accept it. With that being said, I'm always looking for a real cooperation. I really enjoy working on the script with the director. I'm really happy to see when the director is with the project since the very beginning, when we can cooperate on the ideas, on the theme since the very beginning. And for instance, with this last show we made that is going to be premiered in Karlovy, the process, the collaborative process was actually like that. We really started on the project 3 years ago, and the director, Michal Blaško, was with us since the very beginning. I was sending him the drafts of the script, and we were consulting it. I was listening to him, because in the end he will be the person on the set, and he has to believe everything. So I was definitely quite open to him and to his ideas, and I'm really happy that I can say that my feelings are like it was a real cooperation.
Your new series is called Podejrzenie, I can't say it very well, or Suspicion. It's just about to be launched, as you say, at Karlovy Film Festival. It's about a nurse who's accused of murdering her patients. What was it about that topic that grabbed you, that made you want to write the story?
Well, in the first place, it was the situation of a person, of someone who is accused of a terrible crime. He or she claims she didn't commit, but nobody believes her. So I was asking myself, what would it like to be in that situation for myself, how I would behave in that situation. And to me, it felt like a real existential question, So this was a starting point. And later on, I realized that probably it will more suit to our contemporary times if the hero or our main heroine will not be as obviously innocent, I was thinking like maybe it would make for a more interesting story if we as audiences will have to constantly question the fact of her innocence. So I started to change the script a bit, and really we ended up with a story with a heroine that maybe is innocent and maybe is not. And I think this constantly questioning might be quite interesting, or I hope that it will be interesting for the audiences, that they will not know, who they are watching, if they are watching a culprit or just a victim.
And when you write a story inspired by real events, does that help you in a way, or does it give you an extra challenge to get the facts right and make sure you really get the story right?
Well, it definitely helps me, because unfortunately I can't say about myself that I would be a person with a huge imagination. Unfortunately, I don't possess a huge imagination. I'm always working from reality to some extent. So when I know that there is some real story that really took place sometimes somewhere, it really helps me because I can start digging into that story. I can start to look for the most interesting details, that would kind of light up my story. So it's always really very helpful. And when you are writing a story that's only inspired on some reality, on some real events, you probably won't feel so, how to put it, tied up by the reality. So you can actually change something without feeling like you harm someone, for instance. So it's actually very helpful and nice experience to work to some extent from the reality.
I was reading that you're also working on an adaptation of a novel by Simon Moore, Mendel's Dwarf. How does adapting a novel compare to writing an original screenplay?
There is one truth that was being said, I don't know, maybe by William Goldman or by some really famous American scriptwriter. This saying went like, it's much more easier to adapt a bad novel. Maybe it was actually said by Hitchcock. It's easier to adapt a bad novel into a movie than to try to adapt a Dostoevsky. Because when you have a great novel, there is a little space for you as an adaptator to actually change something, or you can't improve Dostoevsky. I mean, the guy and his writing is so great that there is nothing to be changed. So it's always nice to find something that's good enough. There is good enough story for you to tell, but still it's not like a masterwork, or how to put it. With all this being said, I don't want to say that Mendel's Dwarf by Simon Moore would be a lesser story. It's a great book, great story, but still somehow I felt that it gives me a room to work from it and to translate it into a visual language. Unfortunately, I didn't find the right way how to do that. The book, the novel, Mendel's Dwarf, it works with two storylines, with two parallel storylines, which are in a very nice way kind of interwoven, into the book impeccably. Absolutely. Simon Moore is a wonderful writer, and I wasn't able to translate this way of telling the story into the movie. I couldn't find a way how to put those two narrative lines into one screenplay in a good way.
So the project isn't happening?
Project isn't happening. No. It's now, I would say it's a dead project, and probably it's waiting for someone who is more talented and smarter than me to find a way how to do it.
I almost feel guilty asking you this question, but as a film historian, how do you view today's Czech cinema compared to previous periods?
Well, this is a really difficult question to me, Ian, because I'm definitely a part of contemporary Czech cinema. Whether I want or not, it doesn't matter. Well, I think when we think about, for instance, the 1960s, this most famous period of the Czech cinema, about the Czech New Wave, we have to realize always that it took place in a very specific moment in time and in history. And it's something that we probably can't, repeat, can't do again. It will not happen again, I think, or at least not quite soon. I can't foresee in the close future that it can happen. So with this being said, I still think that there are many interesting filmmakers, especially young ones, working today. I'm curious about their work. I'm looking forward to their movies. If I've tried to be critical about our contemporary cinema, I would say that quite often I don't feel like we are making movies that would be dealing with our real social issues, or with the issues our contemporary Czech society is struggling with. This is something that can't be said, for instance, about the Romanian cinematography. They are able to make movies that are touching upon the most painful things going on right now in Romanian society. This is something that probably we are missing right now. Or of course there are some attempts to change it, but maybe they are not quite successful yet, or they haven't been quite successful yet.
My final question, Štěpán. You've had a lot of success already at the age of 37, but what are your dreams? What would you really like to achieve in your career?
This is a bit dangerous to say openly, because I think when you start to talk about your dreams, it might quite happen that your dreams will never materialize or will never really become reality. So you probably shouldn't talk openly about your dreams. You shall keep it for yourself. But I would really like to make significant either movies or TV shows that will be able to cross the borders, and to touch the audiences both here and abroad, to move something in them, to make them feel something, because I think that this is the biggest victory that every movie or every show can achieve, to make you feel something, to make you feel for the characters, to be able to go with them through their personal stories, and to take something from the movie and make it part of your own life, of your own life experience. So this is definitely my dream, to create some stuff that will have this potential to stay with the audiences somehow, to stuck in their heads, and to make them maybe return to the movie or to the show.
My guest in episode 15 of Czech Next Wave has been the great young screenwriter Štěpán Hulík. And if you've enjoyed our chat, why not look up some of the earlier editions of Czech Next Wave, and of course subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is focused on hot young Czech talents, and among their number is organist Ondřej Pivec, who created our theme music. Thank you very much indeed for listening to Czech Next Wave. I'm Ian Willoughby, and I'll speak to you again very soon.